This is the Triangle's Morning News with Donna King.
Good morning. Joining us now here on the Triangle's Morning News, North Carolina Attorney General Josh Stein. Good morning.
Donna, great to be with you.
Good to talk to you. So, Governor Cooper signed the bill recently, providing funds to solve that backlog of sexual assault kits. What are you doing with that, and what is the next step for you?
Sure. Yeah, the Survivor Act is such an important advancement in public safety for North Carolina. In 2017, the legislature and I put forward a bill to require a counting of all the untested kits because we really didn't know how many there were. And we discovered there were about 15,000 untested sexual assault kits sitting on the shelves of local law enforcement across North Carolina, which was a devastating realization. I mean, more in North Carolina than any other state in the country. Each kit comes from a person who suffered an awful crime and to whom we owe our best efforts to try to find justice. So I've been working with the legislature. We drafted this bill called the Survivor Act. It gives us the funds that we need so we can outsource all those kits and eliminate that backlog once and for all. But it also has a requirement that law enforcement forward a kit that comes from a reported sexual assault to a lab within 45 days. And in that way, we know this problem, once we solve it, will never happen again.
So how old are some of these kits? Because will these crimes really be solvable? 15,000 is a lot.
It is a great deal. The crimes absolutely are solvable. My office, we didn't get any money from the legislature last year, and so we went out there and raised $3 million in grant funds, and we've started outsourcing the kits already. We've done about 1,000 kits, and Donna, we've had 200 hits.
Wow.
Meaning identifiable people. These are crimes, one was 42 years, one was 31 years, one was 30 years, one was 29 years, another was 30 years. We just had one last week in Winston-Salem, a 26-year-old rape. And the guy, he's now 71. He was in jail for another crime, was about to be released, but has now being held on a $1 million bond because of this new evidence, which is a great thing.
That's a real success story. How are you going to manage this influx of these old cases plus the existing caseload?
It is going to be a challenge. So, in law enforcement, every time we get a hit, let's say an agency gets 4 hits out of 50 kits they sent in, then those are 4 active investigations where they've got to go find the perpetrator, they've got to get their DNA in another way, and then process the crime. And then that will mean more cases that district attorneys have to bring. But you know what? This is work that we all have to do because many rapists are repeat offenders. They're recidivists. And if we can get these dangerous people off our streets, we can potentially drive down the sexual assault rate. And any person, we've just got to do everything we can to prevent anyone from experiencing this awful crime if we can do it.
Absolutely. What would you do differently? Hindsight's 2020. What should we have done 20 years ago to keep this from happening in the first place?
Well, it is. I really do prefer to focus on solving the problem rather than trying to figure out exactly what happened. But, the science wasn't as good 20 years ago. That case I told you, the 42-year-old case in Johnston County, we actually tested that meaning the state crime lab, 3 or 4 different times. But it was only until 2015 or 16 that the technology, the machinery that we got was advanced enough that it could identify a DNA profile from the sample. The other machines just weren't sophisticated enough. And so now we have the greater sophistication. The database, the number of people in the database that you can match it against, it is much bigger than it used to be because one thing I championed when I was in the Senate was expanding the DNA database so that people arrested of violent crimes would have their DNA uploaded as well, so that dramatically increased the number of people we could get hits against. So the science, everything about it is getting better, and that's why it's so important that we get this done, because we're getting about 10% hit rate whenever we test these cases.
That's much higher than I would have thought. That is good news. So switching gears just quickly, I know you have been involved in a lawsuit over the opioid epidemic. Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, the opioid epidemic is devastating North Carolina. Families, obviously the individuals affected, communities. as bad a drug epidemic as we've ever had. It's certainly the deadliest. We're losing 5 people in North Carolina every day on average to an opioid overdose. And it didn't just happen. It's been coming over a 20-year period of time, and it's the result of an aggressive marketing campaign by drug companies trying to convince doctors in the medical community that opioids were the most effective way of treating pain and they were not addictive. And it turns out neither of those things are true. But as now in the United States, we are awash in these pills. More opioids are prescribed here than any other country in the world by far because of this marketing campaign. And more people are addicted here and more people are dying here. So I believe that the drug companies have a responsibility to help us clean up the mess that they created. And so I sued Purdue Pharma, that one of the leading companies and manufacturer of OxyContin. It's a privately held company, meaning one family owns it, the Sackler family. Sackler family, for the last 10 years, has had a scheme where they've taken out billions and billions of dollars, knowing that this day of reckoning was coming. And now the company's worth hardly anything, $1 billion, maybe $2 billion. So they're content to throw this company into bankruptcy, and they want to get the protections, the shield of bankruptcy for their personal assets when they are the opposite of bankrupt. They're multi-billionaires. And so they put forward a proposed settlement. A minority of states agreed with it. I did not. I didn't think it was fair. I didn't think the Sacklers were being held accountable sufficiently. So I sued 8 individual members of the Sackler family last week so that they can be held accountable.
It seems like a movie. It's pretty dramatic.
It's awful.
It is. It is. What is the next step? When will you hear, and when will this move forward? Yeah,
well, the company's in bankruptcy, so that's going forward. My lawsuit was filed in North Carolina State Court, so that's going forward. You know, it will. These processes, legal processes, as you know, take time. At any point, the Sacklers can bring certainty and relief to this problem. That they profess to care. They say that they have compassion, but they have not, in my view, demonstrated it. So if they step up and make a meaningful commitment, then we can get to work. Meanwhile, there are other drug companies. There are 3 major drug manufacturers. 5 other drug manufacturers, 3 drug distributors, and I'm in talks with all of them to see if they want to help us resolve this. Because what's in all of our interest is for these companies to put this problem behind them, and for us as policymakers to get the resources to help the tens of thousands of North Carolinians who are struggling with opioid addiction.
Attorney General Josh Stein, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Donna, pleasure.
This morning.